Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of At Home with Holmes, our local family podcast, where we cover everything from geopolitics to local Albertan politics. And speaking of family and Albertan,
we are very pleased to share with you a personal sponsor, Cabin on the Coulee Farm. Cabin on the Coulee Farm is a hidden gem in central Alberta here, and it is open from anywhere to May and November. That's a very big window, and our family has made it a priority to go there annually now because, as you know, we don't believe in just doing academic research all day or being politically involved on a quotidian basis. We need time for respite and repose and to touch some grass, and there's no better place to touch grass than here. It is actually rated #1 farm stay in Canada on TripAdvisor. Sounds like some good advice. You should go and take it. Because here you can get the full seclusion experience, from open range hikes, your fires, or if you're anything like my clan, maybe chopping some wood, embracing your inner redneck. And it is a very personal sponsor because it doesn't get more homey than Eric and Josie, who are the family owners of this Alberta prairie glamping business.
And if you want to check out more about their story, you can go on their website, cotc.ca, and that will show you the 3 locations that you could potentially stay at. One being the cabin, which is for a bigger crowd of people. It can hold 6 guests, has 3 bedrooms and 4 beds. And then there is the Coulee Yurt, which has 5 guests, 3 bedrooms, and 3 beds. This one's for a middle size, again, to bigger crowd. And then we have the Grouse House, which can hold 4 guests, 1 bedroom, and 2 beds. All of these are pet friendly, excluding the Coulee Yurt. So if you or anyone you know is looking for a beautiful sunrise in the morning, listening to the sound of cows, or are like me and want to experience your first awe-inspiring moment with God under the starry night sky that actually happened, then go again to their website, cotc.ca, or check out their Substack for some prairie life updates and some behind-the-scenes information, photos, videos, and updates on what's going on with their operations, because this is how you support and explore the beauty of what we're proud to call our home, Alberta. So thank you guys so much for watching our sponsorship. And without further ado, let's get on with the video.
All right.
Matthew McConaughey. All right.
Hey, oh yeah, that was a terrible movie. Anyway.
Dude, Dazed and Confused got me dazed and confused.
Absolutely.
It's kind of the point.
It is the point of the movie.
Pre-programming.
That was my dad's generation, and therefore I'm allowed to criticize it.
And I did a lot of drugs. So it did its job.
Perfect.
Well, on that note, welcome back, everybody.
To Politics at Home with Holmes. This is hopefully, I think, going to be the final part for this
document,
The Value of Freedom, and is Alberta Prosperity possible? Well,
we'd be the richest country per capita in the entire world, right up there with Qatar.
Wow.
Just so you know.
And Qatar is CIA run, so that's pretty good just for regular grassroots.
Yeah, that's just from our hard-earned work. No CIA agents yet. But no guarantees it doesn't happen if we don't pay attention, which is what we alluded to in our last episode. And in our last episode, we covered the very long immigration fiscal plan and potential policies that could go into it. I can't really say much more than that just because of how in-depth it was, but you can watch that episode. We go over the immigration plan, remembering to just keep all of this in mind for the future going forward. This is still a document that's outlining, they're more like guidelines, really.
It's a template.
Yeah, it's a template. So This is to get people thinking, but we're on the final chapter, which is it's the projections into the future of what the true potential of Alberta could be based off of resources, current historical data. So there is a lot of speculation, but it is, again, something that's good to have in mind for stuff that we can strive for as Albertans if we keep this in mind and continue doing our research into the current economic state and keep busting our balls as Albertans do. So
Yeah, it's a nice little speculative projection, but in terms of pivot from Friends, that is going to be a requirement. Is what will it look like if we are independent? What will it look like if we can try and figure out how to get through some of the economic turmoils that are already going on around us that need to be considered and faced? So, because economics is an ebb and flow changing system because you're dealing with human beings. So, but...
Yes, and speaking of, prospering economically, MayCee, cheers.
Oh my gosh.
Cheers to a matcha.
Yeah, you might be wondering what's in my mug. It is brought to you by matcha.
It is brought to you by matcha. And if you would like to support us and our quotidian matcha drinking so we can stay sharp for you lovely viewers, you may buy us not 1, not 3, not 5, but as many as you want on Buy Me a Coffee at Home with Holmes. Otherwise...
Let's just dive right into it. And Dad, if you want to give any preliminary notes or discussion before hopping into this, go for it.
Okay, so this will be, I've gone over this once already. We're going to read like we have been, but I would like to kind of just throw out a little disclaimer, and it's that they actually allude to it a little bit because they give a quote by Yogi Berra. It's tough to make predictions, especially about the future. This section is towards a great economic future. Now, the one thing, like, there's going to be numbers that go from like 2025 to 2045 for the years. There is no straight line in this process, and unfortunately, all too often we find ourselves in a syllogistic line of thinking. A just naturally leads to B to C to D to E at current status quo. And now, if anybody has any, at least even a hint of their finger on the pulse of the economic circumstances geopolitically around the world, which with regards to commodities, gold, silver, copper, platinum, palladium, and whatnot, versus the fiat currency cycle, things that are going on in the Bank of Japan. You got to bear in mind it's a moving system. People like Martin Armstrong, Tom Luongo. For those who like fly over conservatives, Kirk Elliott. There's several different economic minds out there that are taking a look at the quantity of pivoting that is happening with different countries. And a line that I like from Martin Armstrong is that he said, capital has a tendency to go where it's best treated. And so there was a time when people would take money from the Japanese yen carry trade, and then they would buy yen at 0%, and then they would find themselves going to get assets and turn over profit in other countries. So the one thing about this economic future is there's some assumptions to a degree. I mean, like I said, we're going to go into it, and I'm going to start reading because there's a lot here, but I'm not going to go over all the numbers that get talked about kind of mid-range on this document. I'm going to leave that for you guys to do your own little due diligence on this, because I believe that anybody who's taking economics seriously, they're going to look at this and they're going to understand immediately that there is a lot of missing pieces, and the parts that are moving all over the place. All this to say is trying to project to 2045 with the numbers that are listed throughout this particular document. This is where we really are kind of in uncharted territory. I think that I would like to surmise some of that when I do go into maybe like kind of speed reading. You'll hear me going yada 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 as I move forward. And the reason why I'm going to do that is that it's that plane ain't going to land the way it's being presented, but the overarching summary is Alberta will be better off. Yes. Like financially, no matter how the chips fall, if we as a country can bring in policies that put human prosperity at its focal point, with infrastructure and utilizing our natural resources, but also building from them instead of shipping out raw product, right? Like maybe we got to do a little bit of that to get the ball really rolling, but we should be making lots of things from the petroleum sector and the agricultural sector and anything to do with whether it's like uranium or lithium or whatever it is we get our hands on, or even R&D and technological expansion. Then the whole framework of what's being offered in this is going to shift. So that's my little caveat before we get going, and then we'll take it from there. So towards a great economic future. The quote is there. It's tough to make predictions, especially about the future, Yogi Berra.
This is page 35 of the
Yes.
Valley of Freedom document, which again you can find on the Alberta Prosperity Project website.
Introduction and summary. The bulk of this document looks at the financial situation as it is today. In it, there are no material changes to tax policy, no material changes in government operations other than replacement of federal services. However, this section goes beyond that conservative suite of ideas and examines the impact of one suite of options of streamlined and business-friendly policies which an independent Alberta could implement. It considers the effect of a transformative economic and fiscal policy plan for an independent Alberta, particularly significantly tripling oil production and almost doubling gas production enabled by simplified regulations. By capitalizing on Alberta's abundant natural resources, the plan delivers immediate benefits to citizens through tax relief, affordable education, and enhanced health care, while ensuring long-term prosperity through a robust heritage fund. Under this increased production scenario, speculative as it is, oil production projected to grow from 3.8 million barrels per day in 2023 to 9.5 million by 2045, and natural gas from 11 billion cubic feet per day to 21 billion cubic feet per day. Direct revenue could rise from, give or take, 144 billion in 2025 to 334 billion by 2045. Deregulation savings would add 670 billion, give or take, contributing to a total economic impact of 8 trillion, including over 300,000 new jobs and over 600 billion in wages. The fiscal framework, which suggested in this section, replaces property taxes with a simplified frontage and per hectare fee, collecting 50% of current property tax revenue through a flat $50 per foot for urban properties and $125 per hectare for rural residential land. A municipal residency fee should be considered for every adult in every municipality so that the burden of municipal costs does not unfairly land only on property owners. To address the resulting municipal shortfall, provincial grants of $5 billion in 2025, scaling to $6 billion by 2045, ensure continued funding for essential services like roads, schools, and public safety. It also ensures focus by city councils on base service provision by eliminating their power to increase their own funding, and potentially wasting it on initiatives better done by other levels of government, if at all.
Okay, just stop for a second. So for the what do we think about that collection of 50% of current property tax revenue through a flat $50 per foot for urban or $125 per hectare for rural residential land? What do we think about that? It's technically now, instead of just a continuous tax, it's like a flat rate.
Yeah, so like, let's say, for example, property taxes is one of the ways that the city of Calgary is currently fleecing your mother and I. And so a house that we bought for $400,000, they're trying to tell us is $750,000 now. There's counties that are dealing with this problem all over the United States, and that's currently going on right now. Like, we're basically being robbed by the city of Calgary, and it's a lie, might I add. The house and the property is not worth that. And one of the reasons for increased property value assessments is not because my value of my property went up, it's because my dollar has been devalued by the incessant amount of inflative printing that has happened from the government of Canada.
And then my next question was, the municipal residency fee should be considered for every adult in every municipality so that the burden of municipal cost does not unfairly land on only property owners. What is an example of someone in the municipal residency that's not a property owner having to pay
a renter?
Oh, okay. Got you. Clears that up then.
Okay.
And then I think that the only thing I was looking at as well was this provincial grant. So when they were talking about eliminating municipal power to increase their own funding and potentially wasting it on, initiatives and such, like when it talks about increasing their own funding, are they talking about that mechanism usually being like NGOs?
Oh no,
unions,
like what I just described is a means for like you want to eliminate the incentives for city council to falsely represent property values within the city in order to be able to build their purse strings, the budget of the city. Right? It's like
it's a hidden tax, like what?
Yeah, of course. Just like
Kiefer
inflation.
Griffin talks
Oh, like
about.
property inflation.
Yes, it's an inflation, so it acts as a hidden tax, so they can get more money, and they use the excuse of property and scarcity and housing, all of these things that we hear, but it's really just a ploy to get more money into their pocket. And
We live in a griftocracy.
Because with this idea of this provincial grant, that doesn't necessarily mean it takes away municipalities' powers to get money through unions or NGOs. That's not what this is saying, is it?
And that's a whole, like...
Because that's another way and mechanism they try and get power through and money.
We would definitely need to consider our judicial system to understand that lobbying should actually be not possible when it comes to managerial groups such as a city council, or even your legislative assembly. We have, until you're in a position where you've got a society that actually takes lobbying with a certain amount of responsible seriousness, it's kind of like looking at NATO going, we don't want to be irrelevant, so we need to keep having conflicts and justify our reasons for existing and imposing and expanding to basically put Putin into a circumstance where he had to respond. Like when you're the entity that could be becoming obsolete, now you're incentivized to find ways. It's kind of like the arsonist firefighter. He goes and starts fires to justify the fire department. And then they go out and take care of a fire that a fireman actually started and didn't just happen from natural causes, because we build, say houses are being built with better material that's non-flammable. We have better state-of-the-art monitors within homes. Your gas feed to the house is far superior than it was, so you don't end up with a gas leak in your house being blown up, unless you say something the government doesn't like, and then these types of accidents happen, brake lines being cut, stuff like that. But anyways, the thing is, like, that's the whole dynamic, that
moral hazard.
Right. And then it's the Hegelian dialectic, right? We want to do our best to try to remove the problem, reaction, solution from bureaucracy, from the powers that ought not be.
Okay, so with that in mind, you can move on now.
Okay. The tax structure eliminates personal income tax, saving households $14,000 annually, reduces corporate income tax to 10%, and introduces a 5% AST, generating total government revenue of $1 trillion over 2025 to 2045. Citizen-focused policies include reducing post-secondary tuition to $1,750 per year, providing free Pharmacare and dental coverage for 1.5 million children, low-income households and retirees, and investing $1.5 billion annually in venture capital for tech, renewables, and agriculture to diversify the economy. The Heritage Fund, starting at $23 billion in 2025, receives, give or take, $290 billion in planned contributions, plus any surplus, leading to the possibility of it growing to over $1 trillion by 2045, generating significant annual returns to ensure future stability. While this plan is speculative, and one of many plans which could be envisioned, it is indicative of what is possible for the sovereign country of Alberta. By balancing bold reforms with prudent savings, this plan positions Alberta as a prosperous, resilient, and forward-looking economy. The robustness of an independent Alberta's financial capacity begs obvious questions such as, if Alberta had been independent and was asked to join Canada under the conditions, terms, and policies that the province of Alberta operates under today, why would it ever accept that offer? Good question. Why have successive Alberta provincial governments, knowing the amount of Alberta's money supporting the rest of Canada, not being pushing far harder for a better deal or driving Alberta to independence as governments of Quebec have done for decades? Do they not want what's best for Albertans? Do they not care about the happiness and well-being of every Albertan? So, policies and impact details. Key components: low-cost post-secondary education, tuition reduced to 25% of current levels. Benefits: increases access to education, reduces student debt and supports workforce development for diversification. Sustainability, lower cost than free tuition, easily affordable, with long-term economic returns via skilled labor. No personal income tax. We want talented people to want to move to Alberta and apply their skills and talents and let them keep the fruits of their labors. 5%.
That's a good way of putting that.
Amen. 5% AST. Provincial sales tax similar to GST. The move towards more consumptive-based taxation, which inherently is virtuous, rewarding investment and savings rather than the wealth income taxation approach, which penalizes economic success. Depending on future revenues, this could be reduced. 10% corporate income tax. Reduced from 23% to attract business. Intent is to make Alberta the place to invest, grow, and succeed with your business, all of which will increase the overall wealth and well-being of all Albertans. Depending on future revenues, this could be reduced or eliminated. Pharmacare and dental coverage. Free for low-income families, those under 18 and retirees. Improves health outcomes, reducing long-term costs. Example, untreated dental issues cost Canada $1 billion annually in emergency care. Enhances quality of life for low-income and senior citizens. Reduces financial stress, as give or take 20% of Albertans skip dental care due to cost, per 2023 surveys.
I just, before we keep going, have the question on the AST provincial sales tax. And it says this moves towards more consumptive-based taxation.
Yes. So, So, for example, right, an Alberta sales tax, you're going to get the individual that's going to go and buy the 80-inch television, and they are willing to pay the sales price. They want that TV. Whereas another individual is like, I don't want to do that thing. You get to choose with your vote of where you're going to spend your money, how you want to spend your money, and then that way you know it's like, okay, yeah, of course I'm willing to pay that consumptive tax because I want to consume a TV or whatever else it may be.
Oh, okay.
Oh, right, because they're suggesting removing personal income tax.
That's
so you're
right.
not taxed now based off of what you make. They don't want to tax you based off of your labor. They want to tax you based off of what you consume on.
Well,
So
yeah, because it says here,
it's
which
more-
inherently is virtuous, rewarding investment and savings rather than the wealth income taxation approach, which penalizes economic success. But that part where it says rewarding investment and savings, I was wondering how that does that through this consumptive tax-based
Well,
approach.
the thing is like, so say for example, when you're flush, right, then you have a tendency to be willing to go out for dinner a little more often. Like there's an old statistic about, like, say, season ticket holders for Calgary Flames or the Edmonton Oilers. It's like, instead of that being relegated to the upper class, a family is willing to now invest in their local hockey teams, or go to do things, go out from the house. Maybe they'll get that RV. So if you have your consumptive tax in there, it's also when you're flush and you're prosperous and you're, purchasing some stuff, you're going to places, you're doing vacations, then there's the consumer's tax. Well, most people are willing to do that because, hey, we're doing good. Go ahead, do the thing, instead of mandatory based on, because then you're pulling your purse strings a little tightly, especially on economic downturns. So then all of a sudden you're canceling your subscriptions. Now you're not buying the television. Now you're not eating out as often. And then that actually hurts all the other economic sectors of your country, like your tourism industry. It's within your own country, your restaurant and food businesses, your entertainment. So
is that what it means though when it says rewarding savings though, is when there is like that tax kind of implied and you
kind of think
like,
of it, you know in Abigail Schreier's book, she brought up the statistic about how making transitionary hormones and therapies and surgeries free made the likelihood of kids going to do it more. It increased it because now there's no cost. By putting that tax, the consumption tax, on there, people are now paying for it.
And then my last thing was this 10% corporate income tax. This is one of the things that actually Martin Armstrong talked about. So what does the corporate income tax kind of do to the corporation? What is this sort of tax?
this still falls under that. It's a policy of like sort of taxing the companies. So if you got a 23% overhead tax on your company and you're looking going, okay, my profit margin is less than that, I'm not bringing my company to Alberta, because there's just no way. Like, I'm gonna bleed money out of my company. So sorry, I'm not bringing this company or the business or even the R&D department to Alberta. Whereas if it's consistent, this is where when Martin Armstrong's conversation that he had, where he was like, you want a strong legal system so that people understand there's a rule of law, there's consequences for actions, meritocracy is rewarded. Then you want to also demonstrate long-term vision where capital is treated kindly. So if it's 10% across the board, and you're like, say you're going to renegotiate it every 5 years or every 10 years, even better, 20 years, you know what I mean? Like with a fiscal plan for, projections, because you do, for lack of a vision, the people perish, so to speak. Then all of a sudden companies, then they start to look at their dollars necessary to get their company off the ground, their employees, they'll take a look at their business plan, how much money is going to be flowing out of the business versus what's going to take to sustain the business, then what's the profit margin, then they look at the taxes and they go, oh yeah, this is doable. Like this is like, they're only going to believe me consistently for 10%. This allows me to project my earnings, which is also good for shareholders. And then you can kind of see, okay, well, I might be able to sustain a 3 to 4% growth in the after the first 5 years, and then that might settle out once market consumption or saturation happens. Now I'm going to look at maybe a 1 to 2% growth. Perfect. And then that also allows you to maybe pivot, because now your company's kind of reached a saturation point, so you might need to retool your industry because times and technologies change. But you've made a profit. You only had 10% taxes. Do you get what I'm saying? Like it demonstrates a consistency that incentivizes growth and thinking outside the box. Like now you're not in that fight or flight. I need my 5 basics of food, water, shelter. It
also still promotes accountability, because corporate income tax, they're getting rid of personal income tax but keeping corporate, even though it will be reduced from 23%, because from history we know that still corporations, and without regulation, corporations can take over. You get private public partnerships, and you can get, that's how socialism, capitalism, same difference. Companies take over via NGOs.
Yeah, government and corporations.
Yes.
I mean, that's Mussolini's classic definition of fascism.
Yes, and so still having a corporate income tax still provides accountability, where the corporation is still paying something to the province, which is hosting. The province acts as a shareholder because they are hosting this corporation.
And then the last thing, then we can keep going.
You said that last question.
Last thing, I swear to God, is the Pharmacare and dental coverage. That just only miffs me like a bit, not because of the fact that trying to provide that for low-income families or whatever, that's not a problem, but I have my own gripe with just the pharma and dental industries on how they do things specifically. But that would be also something that would probably need to get talked about as well, like maybe even alternative healthcare approaches as well, like holistic methods and such. And then even,
you mean restructuring the mafia known as AHS?
Yeah, that'd be lovely.
Yeah.
Also, we can compare and look at other countries, because even places in Europe and Asia, Japan has a very different structure. They allow, so where here, a roll for or a natural path, you don't have benefits for.
Yeah.
You do get more benefits to more acupuncture, rolfing in places like Asia. So we could also look at, if we're more fiscally able, which we will be, then we could expand.
Can we give Albertans more options?
Variety in our,
for the different people that want to go towards either pharma or someone else that wants to try a more different approach.
Precisely.
A plan that includes all sorts of different tiers of health care that actually address not symptoms but a solution, so that way you remove the client as a client, they get better. And then
I know what you're saying. This reminds me of the conversation we were having about the candle maker, and then when the light bulbs came in. But now you're saying for healthcare, because in the tiny little, this is not a question, this is the last comment. The tiny little thing was like, someone who used to make candles and candle making, and I mean, you could still make them today, sure, right? But they were more driving of a profit when you didn't have things like the light bulb, right? And then all of a sudden, when the electricity came in, the light bulb got invented, right? The candle maker could either choose to be all upset and be like, man, like I can't make candles anymore, and it's not earning me as much for my family. And they can get mad about it and be like, screw them light bulb makers. Or you can decide to take now a different avenue of career, like career avenue, to just try something else. See if
Find
you
another
can
way to serve.
Find another way to serve, exactly. So that'd be the same with healthcare. It's like someone who is, maybe they are a raffler, maybe they are in, I don't know, pharmacy or whatever. And then they find that there's not as much of a actually uprise in people's bad health and illness. And they're like, oh, I'm so sad that people, aren't getting sick anymore? Like, you're a cruel person if that's how you think. But because you can't feed your family because you relied off people getting sick, again, that's kind of sick. But at the same time, you want to heal them. Well, if you actually want to heal them, then heal them, right? And then once we've gotten to that point, then you still have the skill under your belt. If you needed to, you could maybe, I don't know, do a thing where you maybe renew it when the time came that things were getting worse again, or you just go into a different avenue in the meantime. But yeah.
Welcome to Rockefeller Medicine. That is an entirely different podcast.
Yes. Okay.
Venture Capital Diversification Fund supports technology advancement, advanced manufacturing, industries such as AI data centers and agriculture to reduce oil dependency. Frontage and Hectare Fee replaces dwelling value property taxes with a tax based on frontage and acreage for municipal and rural non-farm dwellings. It is in the realm of possibility to eliminate property taxes altogether. Amen. Depending on future revenue. Municipal residency fee could be used by municipalities to manage their growth by raising fees on new residents or lowering fees. Municipal funding. Provincial grants, give or take 5 to 6 billion Canadian dollars per year, cover the shortfall from reduced property tax revenue, allows targeting of funding to specific services or infrastructure, helps ensure municipalities stay in their lane and focus on basic service provisions to residents. Heritage Fund, target to provide a sovereign wealth fund of over 1 trillion by 2045. Sufficient to sustain Pharmacare, healthcare, or education post-oil boom, mimicking Norway's intergenerational wealth model. Provides revenue stability, although strong rules regarding withdrawals are essential to prevent politicians from plundering the fund or short-term needs. What are the economics supporting a future Alberta? Our discussion in this future-looking section needs to begin with what assumptions are necessary to gain a materially increased revenue for an independent Alberta as compared to the status quo calculations done elsewhere in this document. Key assumptions. Deregulation. Broadly speaking, this would eliminate the more onerous of the Canadian regulations, including carbon taxes, emission caps, and mandatory carbon capture and storage CCS requirements. Global demand. Global oil demand is projected to grow modestly until the mid-2030s, then decline gradually due to energy transitions, with demand in 2040 still near 100 million barrels per day per IEA projections. Natural gas demand may remain robust longer due to its role in energy transitions and its internal usage for expanded cogeneration facilities. Market access. Alberta secures sufficient pipeline capacity, e.g. expanded Trans Mountain, Keystone XL revival, or new infrastructure to export increased production without bottlenecks. Investment climate. Deregulation attracts significant capital investment, reversing recent trends of reduced investing due to policy uncertainty. Technology. Existing extraction technologies improve incrementally, lowering costs and increasing recovery rates, but no major technological breakthroughs are assumed. Baseline and historical context. Current production 2023. Alberta produces about 3.8 million barrels per day of oil, mostly oil sands, and 11 billion cubic feet per day of natural gas. Oil sands production grew at a cumulative average growth rate of 9% from 2000 to 2018, but slowed to 2.5% annually from 2018 to 2022 due to regulatory constraints, pipeline limitations, and global market dynamics. Emissions impact. Well over half of the production of CO2 from oil sands is due to natural gas creation of steam for injection. Seeking better means to produce the steam required for oil sands operation using nuclear power, as an example, could reduce emissions by avoiding CCS and emissions reduction investments, estimated at $10 to $20 per barrel in some cases. Regulatory costs. Alberta's current carbon pricing, e.g. TIER tier system, and federal emissions cap increase operational costs. Eliminating these could save producers $5 to $15 per barrel, depending on oil type and facility. So we're going into so for the next few pages here, just for the viewers, all the way up to policy plan, because they have a fiscal summary. When it says economic impact calculation, I'm going to let you, the viewers, kind of travel your way through. I'm just going to give they talk about oil revenue, natural gas revenue, total direct revenue. These are running annual and cumulative costs. They have cost savings from deregulation, broader economic impacts, government review for royalties and taxes plus corporate taxes. The reason why I'm not breaking all this down is, once again, these are all moving parts, and as they suggested, so it's like, instead of like trying to flush out and just read you a whole bunch of numbers, because that was one of the sort of tougher grinds of the previous episode that we had when we did the immigration, I'm going to let the viewer kind of pound their way through that. The fiscal summary is where I'm going to land here, just to give you the baseline, projection, and cumulative. So 2025 baseline, direct revenue, $144.7 billion. Cost savings from deregulation, $20.5 billion. Total economic activity of a 1.75 multiplier is $253.2 billion. Government revenue, $16.5 to $32.9 billion. Midpoint, $24.7 billion. Jobs, 375,000, 150,000 direct, 225,000 indirect, contributing $30 billion in wages.
And that is what we are right now?
That's the baseline for 2025 projection. Don't forget, this was written before 2025.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
2045 projection. Direct revenue, $338 billion. Cost savings from deregulation, $36.3 billion. Total economic activity with the 1.75 multiplier, $584.2 billion. Government revenue, $38.4 to $76.8 billion, midpoint at 57.6. Jobs, give or take 450 to 600,000, 225,000, 300,000 direct, same for indirect, contributing 36 to 48 billion in wages. Cumulative 2025 to 2045. Direct revenue, 4.71 trillion. Cost savings, 678.5 billion. Total economic activity, 8.24 trillion. Government revenue, 550 to 1.098 billion. Midpoint, 824 billion. Jobs, give or take 300,000 to 450,000 new jobs, adding 600 to 900 billion in wages. Policy plan. This plan.
Sorry, can I just ask a question?
Yep.
What is cumulative again? What is that?
Like the total. So their projection from 2025 to their ending time of 2045. This is what they believe was direct revenue, cost savings.
And cumulative is
Right.
over time.
That's right, yeah.
Like accumulating.
Yes.
Interesting. Okay, wow. That's a lot.
And once again, and if you, just a brief moment to take if we have the will, I do believe we do as a population, for R&D, infrastructure, technology, thinking about things like fourth generation nuclear reactors, thorium reactors, starting to get into maglev rail.
That's true.
I mean, if we start really thinking, okay, and roll up our sleeves. It was the first thing I saw when I hitchhiked into this province many years ago, chasing your mom, and I saw Alberta Works on the bumpers of many vehicles, and it has been that way in the hearts of the people. I know it's there. I see it all the time for all my years on the rigs. I just know that we're willing to roll up our sleeves, tie up the bootlaces, so to speak, be good neighbors, have each other's backs, and we start doing those types of projects, like policies and practices that have our fellow human beings at the baseline of what it is that we want to do, instead of chasing economic growth. I believe economic growth will be the byproduct of these other things. Anyways, that's my 2 bits. But remember, this is just conservative estimates. This is a guideline,
It's
framework.
a really cheesy saying, but I feel like it works so well. And it was along the lines of like, if you want to build a beautiful garden, right, then you want to attract the life that will help it prosper. You can't attract that if you don't have any of the right components, right? So we need to be just focusing kind of on ourselves and doing what's best for us, and then that will attract kind of inevitably downstream, as you were saying. So
now we're
Not in an invisible hand kind of way, but I understand what you meant by the metaphor.
yeah.
Policy plan. This plan leverages increased oil and gas revenue to deliver direct benefits to Albertans while ensuring long-term fiscal stability through a strengthened heritage fund. So key components: low-cost post-secondary education. Tuition reduced to 25% of current levels, $1,750 Canadian per year versus $7,000. No personal income tax. Eliminates 14 billion CAD annually, saving households $14,000 roughly per year on average. 10% corporate income tax, reduced from 23% to attract business. 5% AST, new provincial sales tax to partially offset the removal of PIT, moving to more of a consumptive tax approach rather than the current wealth or income taxation approaches. Pharmacare and dental coverage, free for those under 18, low-income households, and retirees, 1.5 million people in 2025. Venture Capital Diversification Fund supports tech, manufacturing, and agriculture to reduce oil dependency. Frontage and Hectare Tax replaces property taxes, collecting give or take 50% of current revenue, providing stable taxation to homeowners and eliminating the creep of property taxes due to increased property valuations. Municipal funding, provincial grants directly to cities aimed at specific services or investments, and ensure cities are properly funded, $5 to $6 billion per year. This has the added benefit of maintaining control of spending by cities and ensure they focus on the basics of city operation. Heritage Fund, a base annual amount from resource revenues, along with deposit of any budget surplus funds gained by taxation and royalties, target being to have $1 trillion in the fund by 2045.
Yeah, and just to re-emphasize, if this whole thing, if you think this is a bit fanciful, it is too optimistic, disregard it. The point of this whole document is just in taxes alone, by gaining our federal taxes back, everybody's got more money back in their pockets than they did before. If Alberta did not work harder from this day forth, we would still be better off than we would be as it is right now. But since it's also very unlikely that Albertans won't try and find a way to prosper further, then the policy potentials that we could all implement, the lower cost of post-secondary education, we can afford to do that if we get the taxes back. No personal income, instead keeping corporate income tax and then still lowering it. Having an Alberta sales tax, we can increase the farmer and dental coverage with the access money that we will have. Venture capital diversification to reduce oil dependency and increase R&D. Frontage and hectare tax to replace property taxes. The municipal funding, that way we can still give local cities their ability to do maintenance, and then the Heritage Fund to ensure the future. Even if we don't invest further into our oil industry, which is basically the talk of every news organization right now and every government, period. If we don't do that, all of those policies we can implement with just the federal taxes that we would get, and we would still be better without the accumulation of developing our own resources.
That, and also think of it this way, and this goes for any Albertan, it does not matter what political party at all, is if you are not getting excessively taxed for your hard work, especially even with that personal income tax, then you automatically are going to want to work harder because you know that your money is yours, and it's not, you're not a slave class to the government. It's not just, oh, I work hard basically to serve this higher entity, right? That's not even necessarily serving me in all aspects that I'd like to be served. So that's another thing that I think will incentivize Albertans to feel like this is a good idea, because if your money's your own, then you are like, okay, well, no, I know that if I do work harder, I know that when I get my paycheck, it stays in my pocket and I get to choose what I want to do with that.
There is also the potential, not saying that it would be a tool, but it could be a tool where, so say for example, you do have people that find themselves with their, monies in their pocket. This was actually something that happened in the United States back in some of its earlier scenarios, some of its financial plans, where the people were doing well and the basics were met, and the industries were growing, and so there was funds, like suggestions where, okay, well, we would like to put this type of money into our community to get an off ramp from a highway, so to speak, and the people came together and they basically all chipped in to make a thing happen. If you start having a vision for each other too, like as neighbors within your community, and it sounds a little utopic, and I know that there's always going to be the exception to the rules for bell curves. There are going to be those individuals. It's my money. It's like, fair enough. I get it. But on average, the reason why we call it a bell curve is that there's actually a larger percentage that do sit in that realm of a willingness to participate, and some that are even generous beyond their means. And we find ourselves like we're a species that shares food. I mean, that's not a very common thing. I'm not saying that there isn't other species on the planet that do it, but it stands to reason to be kept in mind that we do this thing for one another. And when you find yourself well off and you've got a few extra dollars floating around in your life, you have a tendency to have a desire to want to improve the world around you, even if it is charitable donations, whether you're like involved with churches or not. I, for one, willingness to help out neighbors and help people that find themselves down under luck. And that's what a lot of the plans that are in here, like the next section that once again, like I could read it all, but when you look at it, it's going government revenues and expenditures on page 40. It talks about the revenue structure, talks about the frontage and heritage taxes, the municipal funding. And these are all, once again, based on royalties and projections and our successes. I don't want to bore you with all the numbers, but they're all here. It goes through, right? We got provincial grants, expenditures, the heritage fund, what the cost of implementing these policies could be, low costs for post-secondary education, dental care, diversification. By all means, I want to encourage you guys. Like I'll read the explanatory components, and then I'll do the consolidated summary, and that'll end kind of the reading of this particular section. So I'll read from here. But I do want to encourage people, take a look at the numbers. Once again, it's a framework, and it's a framework to demonstrate we can do this. So now we'll move on. Explanatory components. Benefits. Citizens. No personal income tax, saves $14,000 as mentioned previously. Education, $1,750 per year for tuition. Increased access, reduces debt for students entering the workforce. Pharmacare dental, improves health for 1.5 million children. Diversification, creates non-oil jobs and increase economic diversification. Businesses, 10%. CIT, as discussed earlier. Municipalities, $5.6 billion per year. Grants ensures that cities are able to maintain services. Once again, as mentioned earlier, long-term stability, economic growth, $8.2 trillion in activity, 300,000 to 450,000 new jobs. Sustainability, fiscal, policies, $4.6 billion per year, grants $5.5 billion per year, and heritage fund, $41 billion per year, including surplus, fully utilized, $51.5 billion per year, revenue ensuring no deficit, money in your pocket. Revenue stability, royalties, 21.7 to 51 billion per year, AST 3 billion, and frontage hectares for the tax 4 to 4.7 billion, diversity income and heritage fund returns 52 to 56 billion per year by 2045, municipal service grants ensure continued continuity of roads, schools, and utilities.
Risks and mitigations.
Oil price volatility, a drop to 66.67 barrel, cuts 2045 revenue by 75 billion. Heritage fund and AST buffer this. Carbon tariffs, 5 to 10% export costs from global carbon policies. Diversification fund mitigates reliance on oil. Environmental remediation, 130 billion for tailings ponds. Heritage fund returns can address this. Equity concerns. Large frontage hectare properties pay more regardless of value, Personal income tax elimination ensures affordability. Municipal shortfall, covered by grants, but cost overruns require monitoring.
And these are all approximate.
Yeah, obviously. 2045 projection, direct revenue, 300, and this is a repeat of actually what we got from before.
Yeah.
Same with the cumulative. So, yeah, let's not bore our listeners and with too much of that.
It repeats itself because it's just emphasizing.
Well, it does because it's yes,
and it's showing you where it got all the calculations.
Mm-hmm.
But you guys can kind of deep dive into that yourselves.
Yes.
Because we definitely don't want to bore you with that.
But at the same point in time, the heavy lifting needs to be done, my fellow Albertans.
That would be the end of the document.
Yes.
That is the full 44 pages. It has been a journey. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
44? I know it seems so much longer than that, but it's only 44 pages.
It's lots of information.
But it's very dense.
Yep.
And that means it's very well, you can tell there's a lot of thought into this. So that's why I encourage people that if you are not really too focused on the politics of this, just pay attention to what this document has tried to offer thus far. You can't say that there hasn't been some serious thought into it. And if you disagree with anything, as we've always said in all of the episodes, then just that's fine and that's good, and you should talk about it and make recommendations. Email Alberta Prosperity Project if you wish, and you have any questions. Talk to someone that you know is in support of independence and maybe you're still on the fence. Anything, just have conversations flowing and going, because I feel like that's what's going to help us to try and figure out what the best path forward for us would be.
Well, and the reality is this independence movement is clearly already in motion. And if you're on the fence, the best way to get your input is to give your input. If this referendum goes through and then even if it doesn't go through, the reality is we need more Albertans putting their brains, and we need more Albertans involved, because clearly there's a problem. There's a problem in our finances, in our regulations. And we need to solve this. And just like when Calgary had our blanket rezoning, and they should have done a plebiscite, but they just did a general public hearing. It was the biggest hearing in Calgarian history, and all of the people that had their own suggestions, they were from contractors to students in university to parents, you name it. They were giving their input, because whether or not they agreed with the councillors, whether or not you agree with the Jeff Rath or the Dennis Modry, or again, this is irregardless of politics, because this is your livelihood. You get a say, you need a say. And so this is the way to get involved. Start thinking about it now, because a constitutional convention is a good idea, because then we can start reforming our future with our hands in it. So it's not just handed down to us, which is unfortunately how Alberta got roped into being a part of Canada in the first place.
Yeah, a lot of people might gripe about who the face is of the movement. I'd like you to reframe that and reconsider you're the face of the movement. So be the voice. Get your voice into this play. That's literally why we're doing this podcast. This is not about whether or not we fully endorse all facets of any of the three-letter acronyms that frame a group. Yeah, there's lots of them. I'm not even going to go and start listing them, but there's just so many. And the thing is that they're made up of people. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what this is really all boiling down to. We are the people. This is our movement. Success or failure is depending on us. And one of the most important things that we need to do is to be able to actually have the conversation. So that's why we read all this. We wanted to show our due diligence, that we did the hard work. We've read it. We were willing to talk about it. We see some brilliant and reasonable framework that can be utilized. Doesn't mean it has to be utilized. And that first things first, let's get the petition signed so we can find ourselves being able to hold the referendum. And from the time of the winning of the petition to allow for the question to happen, we have a culture and an education and a responsibility to one another to do our damnedest to bring that information to bear with full respect and non-partisanship. And hopefully somewhere down the line, we find ourselves remembering that as human beings, regardless of political standing, we actually have 80% that we agree on. And a lot of what was even in that document, this puts you in a position to be a more prosperous individual. I know that every individual is important, and this should appeal to either side of an aisle. And I hate that whole framework. The power of your service expands in an independent Alberta. As aforementioned, your vote means more, your Senate means more, your legislation means more, your involvement means more. So
yeah, I want to highlight the emphasis on what's going on currently as we are in the middle of this history making, and why we even made this series is because we're in the middle of the petition for the referendum, hopefully to go on to the question. But I saw a comment, because there's lots of videos coming out online of people lining up to go and sign the petition. And there were some people that were like, man, if these people that are showing up, of which are lots of new faces that I have never even recognized within the quote unquote freedom movement, which is what we would call that. But we're seeing all of these young families, old families, so many different Albertans lining up to sign this petition I didn't even know existed or even were paying attention, but they were. Clearly they were. And so now they're coming to do this thing. But there were some people that were like, man, if we had all of these people, thousands of people, like deciding that we're going to stand outside of Ottawa or even the Edmonton legislation grounds, and we're not going to do anything until you decide to fix things and make things better on our terms, because we, the people, are in showing our quality and our quantity right here, right now. Then that could have, like, before we even got into this idea of Alberta independence, which is, again, we're in favor of it, clearly, we could have seen so much more participation that maybe would have helped us stop a bit of the bleeding of what Canada was doing to Alberta in this entire process that has led us to get so angry and so encouraged to want to leave. And so I'm like, well, that is just citizen participation and engagement then. That it's clearly like we need to solve that problem amongst a lot of other ones.
Also only 1 degree, because we saw what happened when thousands upon thousands of Canadians, not just Albertans, lined up outside of Ottawa. Well, emergency measures were incited.
Which were illegal. People got trampled on and people got debanked. So even with citizen engagement, that's why this Alberta independence it's necessary, because even if we did have the citizen engagement, if you have somebody over your head and they have all of the money they need, even if it's your money, they have all of your money in order to justify it, what are you going to do? It didn't work then. The mandates came down eventually, but that didn't solve the problem, clearly. And there's still people suffering of a downstream consequence from the measures that were enacted and the mRNA injections. We're not Quebec, and even then, what happened to Quebec, even that is not apparently what we thought it was. And them appeasing Quebec isn't really appeasing Quebec, because Quebec is still not totally happy where they are. So
why would they need to rely on Albertans' money through equalization payments if actually their system was working and healthy and good for them? They'd be able to produce for themselves.
And they can, if it wasn't for if it wasn't for some of the equalization contracts and the fine print in between, they could capitalize on more revenue. If it wasn't for those fine lines, they would stop qualifying for the equalization payments if they capitalized on they charged 2 cents more, I think was the statistic, 2 cents more on their hydropower, and then suddenly they don't qualify for equalization payments. They could charge way more than 2 cents more, and they wouldn't need the equalization payments. But
unfortunately, the context of even the Quebec to Alberta debate is as simple as Alberta's history from the outset of it becoming a province was always to be the funder of the welfare state. Quebec's role was not that. It was supposed to be the receiver. So, of course, they can have their negotiation and go for whatever it is that they want to go for. Alberta's different because we are the money maker, the cash cow, and they don't want to get rid of that so easily.
Yeah, there's nobody saying, "Oh, please, Alberta, don't leave," across Canada. And let's make no mistake, the system is working exactly as it was intended to.
And all of Canada's suffering because of it. Alberta just wants to be able to get their head out of the water first, because we believe we have the means to do so. And then if we get out, well, like Dad said at the beginning of this episode, and we've alluded to in previous episodes, put your own oxygen and mask on first. Only then can we save our fellow Canadians.
That, and the thing I like as well is adding on to the trucker analogy and such, and even with the new appeal that came forward about it being illegal of what they did to the truckers. Eva Chipiak came out with a great post, and I really admired it. And she was saying that justice denied is accountability. Justice delayed is accountability denied, right? And so for 4 years, nothing's been done to say on a justice level that what happened to those individuals was wrong and unlawful, and they were just peacefully protesting. 4 years go by, and now you say something, right? But Justin Trudeau, we had a federal election in that time frame, and he left without anything happening, no repercussions whatsoever, and lots of other things, and people are not facing the accountability that they should be facing because of what they did. And only now does a piece of paper say, oh yeah, you're right, that was wrong. It's like, no, that was wrong from day one, not 4 years later, and now it's wrong.
Even at that, there's going to be no restitution. You know, he's rewarded. You fail up in that thing, right? Doesn't he got Katy Perry on his arm now?
Yeah, right.
You know, so it's like, no, that there is no accountability, and that's a bigger problem.
I think that's why the hurt of what Albertans and Canadians have faced thus far from just the federal government as well. I think that that will be the biggest lesson going forward of how to really try and hone in how we can make Alberta more prosperous is we got to look at those hurts and say that can't happen again. I mean, you can't get rid of it entirely, but like as much as you can try and mitigate it for as long as you can. It's the whole more, better, perfect union, not perfect system. And that's it. Nothing will fail because it fails the minute that we aren't paying attention anymore.
We run that risk even as an independent Alberta. We have to understand there's a lot of moving hands within what's going on in our province right now on our way to attempting the conversation of an independent nation. And as you had mentioned earlier, there's several interest groups that really would like to get in front of the parade. Mm-hmm. So, and we need a savvy citizenry that this video is for you, the people. As much as it was for us to be able to discuss it and have our thoughts put out there, it's for you guys. If there's anything in this series that can help you benefit your mind to come into a more well-rounded contextual place so that you can discern these trepidatious waters that we're currently sailing in, that will warm my heart if it does help. And then hopefully we'll see you in the debate, and we'll see you at the polling stations, and we'll see you with the freedom of our own country.
Yeah.
That concludes the series. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
And on the next one, we'll just do like a little
do a fireside
dialogue.
chat.
Yeah.
Sure.
Awesome.
Adieu. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Bye.